There's a kind of fear that doesn't come from knowing you'll be hurt, but from knowing you'll be seen completely. Elena lived with that fear. She wasn't afraid of the powerful man who held her fate in his hands, but of what would happen when he looked past her defenses and saw the truth she'd been hiding her whole life. That she'd never believed she deserved gentleness, that she'd spent 28 years convinced that softness was something other women received. Never her. Until the night she knelt before a man called the King of Shadows and discovered that sometimes mercy wears the face of danger. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from, and if you feel it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. Your support makes all the difference. The rain hammered against the tall windows of the penthouse office, creating rivers of light that distorted the city skyline beyond. Elena's knees pressed against cold marble floor, her hands trembling despite her efforts to steady them. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the polished black shoes just 3 feet in front of her. Italian leather, perfectly maintained. The kind of detail that spoke of control, of precision, of a man who left nothing to chance. She'd been kneeling for 17 minutes. She knew because she'd been counting her breaths, trying to slow the panic threatening to claw its way up her throat. 1 breath. 2 breaths. 3. The silence in the room was worse than any threat. It pressed against her skin like a physical weight, thick with expectation and unspoken violence. Victor Constantin didn't need to raise his voice. That was the first thing people learned about him. The second thing they learned, if they lived long enough, was that his quietness wasn't peace. It was the stillness before an avalanche, the held breath before a storm breaks. He ruled the East Coast underworld the way winter rules the northern forests. Inevitable, inescapable, beautiful in its brutality. Look at me. His voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk, smooth, controlled, with an accent that spoke of Moscow winters and blood-soaked snow. Elena's breath caught. She'd been ordered not to meet his eyes when she was brought in. Defying that order now felt like stepping off a cliff, but defying his direct command felt like something worse. Slowly, she raised her head. The first thing she saw was his hands, resting calmly on the arms of the leather chair behind his desk. Large hands, scarred knuckles, a silver ring on his right hand engraved with symbols she didn't recognize. Then, his face, sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, a jaw that looked carved from granite, dark hair swept back from a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so terrifying, but it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gray like winter storms, gray like smoke, gray like the edge of a knife. They looked at her with an intensity that made her feel transparent, as if every secret she'd ever kept was written on her skin in ink only he could see. Do you know why you're here, Elena? The way he said her name made it sound like a secret. Intimate. Dangerous. She swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. My brother. The words came out rough, barely above a whisper. Marco stole from you. $500,000 in product from the Port Richmond warehouse. He disappeared 3 days ago, and your men came for me instead. Victor tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a scientist studies something under a microscope. Your brother stole from me. This is true, but that's not why you're here. He stood, and Elena's entire body tensed. He was tall, easily 6'3", broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. He walked around the desk slowly, his footsteps silent on the marble despite his size. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive. Cedar and smoke. You're here because you came to my club 3 hours ago. You walked past my security, demanded to see me, and when they refused, you made quite a scene. Do you remember what you said? Elena's cheeks burned. She remembered. She'd been desperate, terrified for Marco despite everything. despite the fact that her little brother had once again dragged her into his chaos. I said I'd do anything. I said to take me instead of him, that his debt was my debt, that I'd work it off however you wanted. Anything. Victor repeated the words softly, and something flickered in those gray eyes. Something that wasn't quite cruelty but wasn't kindness either. Do you understand what that word means in my world, Elena? Do you understand what men like me do with women who offer anything? Fear should have been the only thing she felt. Terror should have locked her muscles and stolen her voice. But underneath the fear was something else. Something she didn't want to name. A strange electric awareness of how close he stood, of the power radiating from him like heat from a flame. She'd spent her whole life making herself small, invisible, untouchable. She'd learned early that wanting things, needing things, only led to disappointment. Better to expect nothing, to need no one, to keep every vulnerable part of herself locked away where it couldn't be used against her. But something about kneeling before this dangerous man made all her carefully constructed walls feel paper-thin. I understand, she said, and was surprised to hear her voice steady. I understand that you could do anything you want to me, that no one would stop you, that no one would even look for me if I disappeared. I understand that I have no power here, no leverage, nothing to bargain with except myself, but Marco is 22. He's stupid and reckless and he makes terrible choices, but he's my brother. He's all the family I have left. So yes, I meant it. Anything. The silence stretched between them like a living thing. Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, a subtle recalibration of energy. He reached down, and Elena flinched before she could stop herself, but he didn't strike her. His hand, warm and impossibly gentle, touched her chin, tilting her face up further until she had no choice but to meet his eyes fully. "You're afraid," he observed, and it wasn't a question. His thumb brushed along her jawline, a touch so light it could have been accidental except for the deliberate way he watched her react to it. "But you came anyway. Why?" The question caught her off guard. "I told you. Marco is..." "No." The word was quiet but absolute. "I know about Marco. Weak, addicted to gambling, in debt to 6 different organizations besides mine. This isn't his first theft, just his most ambitious. He's worthless, Elena. A liability. You're intelligent enough to know this. So I ask again, why did you really come?" The truth sat in her throat like a stone. She could lie, should lie. But something about those winter storm eyes made deception feel impossible. "Because I'm tired of being powerless," she heard herself say. "My whole life things happened to me. My father left when I was 7. My mother died when I was 19. Marco spirals and I clean up the mess. I work 2 jobs to keep our apartment, to pay his debts, to keep him alive. And I'm invisible. I'm the girl who serves coffee, who answers phones, who exists in the background of other people's lives. But tonight, when I walked into your club and demanded to see you, for the first time in my life, people looked at me. Really looked. Like I mattered. Like I was someone who could make demands. Even if it was just for a moment. Even if it was stupid and reckless. I wasn't invisible anymore. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest, and more revealing than she'd intended. Victor's expression didn't change, but his thumb continued its slow path along her jaw. A touch that felt like assessment, like he was reading her through her skin. "Stand up," he said finally, stepping back. Elena's legs trembled as she rose, pins and needles shooting through her knees from kneeling so long. She was 5'6" in her worn sneakers, which meant she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact with him. He walked back to his desk, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He held one out to her. Elena stared at it, confused. "I don't. It's whiskey. Drink it." "You're shaking." She took the glass with both hands to keep from dropping it, brought it to her lips. The liquid burned down her throat, harsh and warming. Victor drank his own in one smooth swallow, watching her over the rim of his glass. "Your brother is dead," he said, and Elena's world tilted. The glass slipped from her numb fingers, would have shattered on the marble except Victor moved with impossible speed, catching it before it fell. He was found 3 hours ago in a motel in Atlantic City. Overdose, heroin, probably cut with fentanyl. He was dead before my men even started looking for him. The words didn't make sense. Elena heard them, understood them individually, but together they formed a reality she couldn't process. No, Marco wouldn't. He promised me he was clean, he said. He lied. Victor's voice wasn't cruel, just factual. Addicts lie. It's what they do. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not sorry he's dead. He was weak. And weakness is a disease in my world. Elena couldn't breathe. The room spun. 3 years. 3 years of covering for Marco, of believing his promises, of sacrificing her own life to keep him safe. And he'd been using the whole time. He'd looked her in the eyes and lied, had taken her money and her trust and her hope, and turned it all into poison in his veins. The grief hit first. Sharp and viscous. Then, anger. Then something worse than anger. A cold understanding that she'd wasted years on someone who'd never intended to save himself. So why am I still here? Her voice sounded hollow, distant. If Marco's dead, his debt died with him. You have no reason to keep me. Victor set both glasses down on his desk with deliberate care. You offered anything, Elena. You walked into my world and made a bargain. The fact that your brother is no longer alive to benefit from your sacrifice doesn't void your offer. You belong to me now. The question is what I'm going to do with you. The words should have terrified her. They did terrify her. But underneath the fear was that same strange electricity, that awareness that something fundamental had shifted in her life. I don't understand. What do you want from me? Victor moved closer again, and this time, Elena didn't flinch. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of dark hair back from her face. His touch was so gentle it made her chest ache. I want to offer you a choice, he said quietly. The first option is simple. You walk out that door, go back to your apartment, back to your 2 jobs, back to your invisible life. I'll have your brother's body delivered to a funeral home. I'll pay for the burial. We'll never see each other again, and you'll be safe from my world. He paused, and something flickered in those gray eyes again. The second option is more complicated. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. What's the second option? You stay. You work for me. Live in my world. Learn what it means to be seen, not as someone's sister, not as someone who serves coffee or answers phones, but as yourself. I have businesses that need managing, operations that need oversight. You have a degree in business management that you've never used because you've been too busy saving your brother. I can give you work that matters, that pays well, that makes you visible in ways you've never imagined. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. And what would you want in return? The question came out steadier than she felt. Victor's smile was slight, more a suggestion than a full expression. Your loyalty, your competence, your honesty, and your time. I'm not offering you freedom, Elena. I'm offering you a different kind of prison, but one where you'll have power, purpose, protection. You'll answer to me. Work when I say work. Go where I say go. But you'll never be invisible again. You'll matter. The question is whether that's worth the price. Elena's mind raced. Every logical part of her screamed to run, to take the first option, to escape while she still could. This man was dangerous. He ruled an empire built on violence and fear, Staying in his world meant blood on her hands, meant crossing lines she'd never imagined crossing. But the alternative was going back to the coffee shop, to the phone calls, to the gray numbness of a life that had never really been hers. Going back to waiting for the next crisis, the next disaster, the next person who would need her to be small and quiet and selfless. If I stay, she said slowly, if I choose the second option, what happens tonight? Right now? Victor's expression was unreadable. Tonight, you sleep in one of the guest rooms upstairs. Tomorrow we discuss the specifics of your employment. You'll be given an apartment in one of my buildings, a salary, access to resources. You'll start learning how my organization works, what I expect, how to survive in this world. But tonight, you rest, you mourn if you need to. You process what you've lost and what you're choosing. It was the gentleness in his offer that broke something inside her. She'd expected cruelty, expected to be used, expected violence. But this quiet consideration, this unexpected mercy, made her eyes burn with tears she refused to let fall. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why would you do this for me? You don't know me. I'm nobody. Victor's hand cupped her face fully now, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts. You're wrong. I know exactly who you are, Elena. I've known since you walked into my club 3 hours ago and demanded to see me. Do you think I grant audiences to desperate siblings of petty thieves? Do you think I let just anyone kneel in my office? He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel his breath against her forehead. I had you investigated the moment my security called me. I know you graduated top of your class with a degree you've never used. I know you work at a coffee shop during the day and answer phones for a medical office at night. I know you've paid your brother's debts 17 times in the last 3 years. I know you're 28 years old and you've never had a serious relationship because you're too busy keeping everyone else alive. I know you're brilliant and wasted, and so convinced you don't deserve better that you've never even tried to reach for it. Elena's breath caught. The idea that he'd seen her, really seen her, all of her, made her feel exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical vulnerability. And that's why you want me to work for you? Because I'm wasted potential? No. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. I want you to work for me, because when you looked at me just now, you weren't afraid of what I'd do to you. You were afraid of how much you wanted to stay. You were afraid of how alive you felt kneeling on my floor, of how good it felt to finally matter to someone. And that kind of hunger, Elena, that kind of need to be seen, that's what I understand. That's what I can use. But more than that, that's what I can feed. The words should have felt like manipulation. They probably were manipulation, but they also felt like truth. Like someone had reached inside her chest and pulled out the secret she'd been keeping from herself for years. She was tired of being invisible. She was tired of being good and selfless and small. And yes, there was something intoxicating about the way this dangerous man looked at her, like she was something valuable, something worth keeping. I'll stay, she said, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff, like setting fire to her old life and watching it burn. I'll take the second option. I'll work for you. Victor's smile was slow, satisfied, like a predator that had just cornered its prey. But there was something else in his expression, too, something that looked almost like relief. Good. But understand this, Elena. Once you choose this world, there's no going back. You'll see things that will change you. You'll do things that will keep you awake at night. The innocence you're carrying, the belief that you're fundamentally good, that will die. And you'll never be able to return to the woman you were before tonight. Are you sure you can live with that? Elena thought about Marco's lies, about all the time she'd sacrificed for someone who'd never intended to save himself. She thought about the coffee shop manager who barely remembered her name, about the medical office where she was just a voice on the phone. She thought about going home to an empty apartment and crying alone, because that's what invisible people did. They grieved in silence, where no one would see. "I'm sure," she said, and meant it. "The woman I was before tonight was already dying. At least this way, I get to choose what I become." Victor's hand dropped from her face, and she felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. "Then welcome to your new life, Elena Volkov." The use of his last name startled her. "I'm not. You are now. Everyone who works for me takes my name. It's protection. A signal to the rest of the underworld that you're under my authority. Anyone who touches you, touches me. Anyone who threatens you, threatens the Konstantin organization. You're mine now. And everyone will know it." The possessiveness in his words should have felt threatening. Instead, it felt like armor. Like for the first time in her life, someone was standing between her and the chaos of the world. "What do I call you?" she asked. "When we're alone, you call me Victor. In front of others, you call me Sir or Mr. Konstantin. You'll learn the difference. When to show respect, when to show familiarity. It's a dance, Elena, and I'll teach you every step." He walked to the door, opened it. Two men stood in the hallway outside, both large, both armed. "Mikhail will show you to your room. There's clothes in the closet that should fit. Toiletries in the bathroom. Food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., meet me in the dining room. We'll discuss your new position over breakfast." "Do you have questions?" Elena had 1,000 questions, but her mind was too full, too overwhelmed to form them into words. Just one. "Do you do this often? Take in strays who wander into your club?" Victor's expression softened slightly, something that might have been amusement flickering in those gray eyes. "Never. You're the first person in 15 years to make me curious enough to break my own rules. Sleep well, Elena. Tomorrow, your real education begins." He gestured to Mikhail, who nodded respectfully. Elena followed the large man down a hallway lined with expensive art and soft lighting. Everything in Victor's world was beautiful and dangerous, polished surfaces hiding sharp edges. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment. A massive bed with dark gray linens, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Elena stood in the center of the room, her worn sneakers sinking into carpet so thick it felt like walking on clouds, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. She'd lost her brother. She'd pledged herself to a Mafia king. She'd traded her invisible life for one where she'd be seen constantly, scrutinized, tested, shaped into something new. She should have felt grief, for Marco, should have felt terror at her choice. But all she felt was a strange, electric anticipation, like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. For the first time in 10 years, she had no idea what tomorrow would bring, and that uncertainty felt more alive than any safety she'd ever known. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, watching the city lights flicker through the windows, thinking about the way Victor had looked at her, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve, a challenge he wanted to meet. She thought about his words, that kind of hunger, that kind of need to be seen. That's what I can use. But more than that, that's what I can feed. She should have been afraid of being used, but part of her, the part she'd kept locked away for so long, whispered that maybe being used for something important was better than being useful for nothing at all. The sun rose slowly over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Elena showered in the enormous bathroom, dried herself with towels softer than anything she'd ever owned, and opened the closet. Inside hung clothes that fit her perfectly. Simple but expensive, dark jeans, and a cream-colored silk blouse. Leather boots that must have cost more than she made in a month. Everything in her size. Everything chosen with care. Victor had prepared for her arrival. Had known she'd say yes, even before she did. At exactly 8 a.m., she made her way downstairs, following the scent of coffee and something baking. The dining room was smaller than she expected, intimate despite the expensive furnishings. A table that could seat 12 but was set for 2, positioned by windows that overlooked a private garden. Victor sat at the head of the table, reading something on a tablet, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his expression. Approval, perhaps, or satisfaction. "You look better," he observed, gesturing to the seat on his right. "Sit. Eat. We have much to discuss." The spread was elaborate. Fresh pastries, fruit, eggs cooked 3 different ways, smoked salmon, cheeses she couldn't name. Elena's stomach growled despite her nerves. She hadn't eaten since lunch the previous day, had been too terrified to think about food. She filled her plate carefully, aware of Victor watching her every movement. "First thing you need to understand about my world," Victor said, pouring her coffee from a silver pot, "is that everything is a test. How you sit, how you eat, how you speak, how you dress. People will be watching you constantly, looking for weakness, for proof that you don't belong. They'll test you with insults, with challenges, with situations designed to make you crack. Your job is to never crack. To be steel-wrapped in silk. Do you understand?" Elena swallowed her bite of pastry. "You want me to be hard." "No. I want you to be strong. There's a difference. Hard people break under enough pressure. Strong people bend, adapt, survive. You've been bending your whole life, Elena, accommodating everyone else's needs. I'm going to teach you to bend with purpose, to choose when to give and when to hold firm." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Tell me about your degree. What did you learn?" Elena forced herself to meet his eyes, to not look away despite the intensity of his gaze. "Business management, minor in economics. I focused on organizational systems, on how to make companies run more efficiently. I was good at finding waste, at optimizing processes, at seeing patterns others missed. And you've been using that brilliant mind to answer phones and serve coffee for how many years?" The disgust in his voice was barely concealed. 3 years. Since my mother died and Marco became my responsibility. No more. Starting today, you work for Constantin Industries. Officially, you'll be listed as a business consultant. Your job is to audit my legitimate holdings, find inefficiencies, recommend improvements. Unofficially, you'll be learning how my entire organization works, both legal and otherwise. You'll shadow me, attend meetings, observe operations. You'll see everything, and you'll tell no one. Can you keep secrets, Elena? I've been keeping them my whole life. The words came out bitter, and Victor's expression softened slightly. I know. But the secrets you'll keep now are different. They're not about protecting weak people from consequences. They're about protecting yourself, protecting this organization, protecting me. One wrong word to the wrong person could get you killed. Could get me killed. This isn't a game, and there's no room for mistakes. Are you afraid? Elena considered the question honestly. Yes, but I'm more afraid of going back to being invisible. Victor's smile was slight, but genuine. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't let it control you. Use it. Channel it. Let it make you careful but not paralyzed. He stood, walked to a cabinet and pulled out a sleek laptop, a phone, and a set of keys. He placed them in front of her. The laptop is yours. Encrypted. Secure. Use it for all work-related communication. The phone is also encrypted. My number is already programmed in. You call me if you need anything. If you're threatened. If you're uncertain. I'm always available to you. The keys are to an apartment 2 floors below this penthouse. It's yours, for as long as you work for me. Fully furnished, stocked, secure. Elena stared at the items, her mind struggling to process the sudden material wealth being casually handed to her. This is too much. I can't. You can. And you will. You represent me now, Elena. That means you dress well. You live well. You present yourself as someone of value. Image is everything in this world. No one respects poverty. No one fears weakness. You'll have a clothing allowance, an expense account for meals and necessities. You'll be paid $20,000 a month to start, with bonuses based on performance. You'll never worry about money again. $20,000 a month. Elena made $2,000 working 80 hours a week at her 2 jobs. The number was so absurd it didn't feel real. What's the catch? What do you really want from me? Victor returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. I want what I said. Your loyalty, your competence, your honesty. But there's something else. Something I didn't mention last night because you weren't ready to hear it. Elena's pulse quickened. I'm listening. You intrigue me. That's rare. I meet hundreds of people every month, and they all want something from me. Power, money, protection, revenge. They're all the same. All predictable. But you walked into my world and asked for nothing for yourself. You were willing to sacrifice everything for someone who didn't deserve it. That kind of loyalty, misplaced as it was, is valuable. But more than that, the way you looked at me when I touched you, the way your breath caught, the way you leaned into my hand even though you were terrified, that tells me something else. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, those gray eyes boring into hers. It tells me you're hungry for more than just visibility. You're hungry for connection, for someone who sees all of you and doesn't flinch. You've spent so long being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who holds everything together. But who holds you together, Elena? Who takes care of you? The question hit like a physical blow. No one. The answer was no one. Had always been no one. Elena had been alone since her mother died. Had been emotionally alone long before that. I don't need anyone to take care of me, she said. But the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Victor's smile was knowing, almost sad. Everyone needs someone. The difference is whether you're brave enough to admit it. I'm not offering you romance, Elena. I'm not promising you love or fairy tales. But I am offering you honesty. I'm attracted to you. I have been since the moment you knelt on my floor and looked at me with those dark eyes full of fear and defiance. I want you. And in my world, I take what I want. But I also protect what's mine. I value what serves me well, and I reward loyalty with loyalty. Elena's mouth went dry. You're saying you want me to be more than just an employee. I'm saying that our relationship will evolve in whatever direction feels natural. Right now, you work for me. You learn from me. You prove yourself. But if in time something else develops between us, I won't deny it. And neither will you. Because I don't allow dishonesty in my inner circle. If you want me, you'll tell me. If you don't, you'll tell me that too. Either way, your position is secure. Your value to me isn't contingent on whether you warm my bed, is that clear? It should have felt like a threat. It should have felt like coercion. But Victor's directness was almost refreshing after years of men who said one thing and meant another, who made promises they never intended to keep. It's clear, Elena said. But I have a condition. Victor's eyebrow rose. Surprised. You're in no position to make conditions. Maybe not. But you said you value honesty, so here's mine. If something happens between us, it happens because I choose it, not because I'm afraid to say no, not because I owe you, not because it's expected. It happens because I want it. If you can agree to that, then we have no problem. The silence stretched between them, tense and electric. Then Victor laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face from intimidating to almost boyish. You have spine. I wondered if you did, if it was just desperation last night, or real strength. Now I know. He extended his hand across the table. Deal. Nothing happens between us unless you choose it freely. I'm many things, Elena, but I'm not a man who takes unwilling women. There's no satisfaction in that, no victory. Elena took his hand, felt the warmth of his palm, the calluses that spoke of violence, the strength that could crush her fingers but held them gently instead. Then we understand each other. We're beginning to. Come. I want to show you the first property you'll audit. We have a restaurant in Little Italy. Been losing money for 6 months. The manager swears it's the economy. But I think he's skimming. You're going to find out which. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. Elena threw herself into work with the intensity of someone who'd been starved for purpose. The restaurant in Little Italy was indeed being embezzled from. The manager had been running a side operation selling stolen liquor to other establishments. Elena presented her findings to Victor with detailed spreadsheets and documented evidence. The manager disappeared. Elena didn't ask where. She learned quickly what questions not to ask. She audited a nightclub in Chelsea, optimized the schedule and reduced labor costs by 30% without firing anyone, just by redistributing shifts more efficiently. She reviewed the books for a shipping company and discovered a billing error that had been costing Victor $50,000 a month for 2 years. She fixed it in a day. Victor watched her work with the intensity of a teacher evaluating a promising student, offering occasional guidance but mostly letting her find her own way. He was demanding, accepted no excuses, had standards that seemed impossibly high. But when she met those standards, his approval felt better than any praise she'd ever received. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings they had breakfast together, discussing the day's work. Afternoons she was in the field, visiting properties, meeting managers, learning the vast web of Victor's empire. Evenings, she reported back, sometimes in his office, sometimes in his penthouse, sometimes over dinner at restaurants where everyone knew his name and feared his presence. He never touched her beyond casual contact, a hand at the small of her back guiding her through a door, his fingers brushing hers when passing documents. But the awareness between them grew daily, a tension that hummed in every silence, every glance, every moment they were alone together. Elena found herself thinking about him constantly. The way he moved, economical and precise. The way he spoke, choosing words with the care of someone who knew their power. The way he looked at her, like she was a mystery he was slowly unraveling. She caught herself watching his hands during meetings, remembering how gently they'd cupped her face that first night, imagining how they'd feel elsewhere. She knew it was dangerous, knew she was playing with fire. But after 28 years of being careful, of being good, of denying herself anything that felt too intense, the danger was intoxicating. On a Friday night 4 weeks after she'd knelt in his office, Victor invited her to his penthouse for dinner. Not work he'd specified, just dinner. Elena spent an hour choosing what to wear, finally settling on a black dress she'd bought with her first paycheck. Simple but elegant, ending just above her knee. She left her hair down, applied subtle makeup, looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident. She looked powerful. She looked like someone who belonged in Victor's world. The penthouse was different at night. Softer, warmer. The city lights beyond the windows creating a backdrop of scattered stars. Victor answered the door himself. No security, no staff. Just him in dark jeans and a black sweater that clung to his frame. He looked younger like this. Less the king of shadows and more just a man. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you." "You said dinner?" "I cooked." "I hope that's not disappointing." The idea of this dangerous man cooking was so unexpected that Elena laughed. "You cook? I'm Russian. Of course I cook. My grandmother would disown me if I couldn't make a proper borscht." He led her to the dining room where the table was set for two, candles flickering, the scent of something rich and savory filling the air. I made beef stroganoff. It's the only thing I make well. But I make it very well. The meal was delicious, rich and hearty and perfect for the cold November night. They ate slowly, talking about everything except work. Victor told her about growing up in Moscow, about his grandmother who raised him after his parents died, about immigrating to America at 16 with nothing but the clothes on his back, and a name that opened certain doors in the underworld. Elena told him about her mother, about the long illness that had drained their savings and left her alone at 19 with a teenage brother and a mountain of debt. She told him about the dreams she'd had once, of opening her own consulting firm, of traveling, of living in a loft with big windows and plants everywhere. You can still have those things, Victor said quietly. The loft, the plants, the travel. You're making more money now than you ever did. What's stopping you? I don't know. It feels like if I reach for things I want, they'll disappear. Better to not want anything than to want and lose. Victor set down his fork, his expression serious. That's fear talking. Fear that you'll be hurt again, disappointed again, left again. But Elena, that's not living. That's just surviving. And you're too vital, too brilliant to merely survive. He reached across the table, took her hand in his. I told you I'd feed your hunger to be seen. But I want to feed more than that. I want to teach you that wanting things isn't weakness. It's human. It's alive, and you deserve to feel alive. The touch of his hand sent electricity up her arm. Elena's heart raced, her breath quickening. Victor, tell me to stop and I will. Tell me you don't want this and we'll finish dinner and never speak of it again. But if you want what I want, if you feel what I feel when we're together, then tell me that too. Be honest with me, Elena. What do you want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Elena looked at their joined hands, at the contrast of his scarred knuckles against her smooth skin. She thought about all the reasons to say no, to keep this professional, to protect herself. But she was so tired of protecting herself from feeling anything real. She started, her voice barely a whisper. I want to stop being afraid. I want to let myself want things without apologizing. I want to feel alive instead of just surviving. And yes, I want you. I have for weeks. But I'm terrified, because everyone I've ever wanted has left. Victor stood, pulling her gently to her feet. He cupped her face in both hands, tilting it up to his gray eyes searching hers. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. People in my world hurt each other. It's inevitable. But I can promise that I won't abandon you. That if you give yourself to me, I'll value what you give. That I'll protect you with everything I have. And that I'll never make you feel invisible again. Is that enough? Elena's eyes burned with unshed tears. It was more than anyone had ever offered her. More than she'd ever dared to hope for. Yes, she whispered. Yes, it's enough. Victor's kiss was gentle at first, questioning, giving her space to pull away. But when she leaned into him, when her hands fisted in his sweater and pulled him closer, the gentleness transformed into something fierce and claiming. He kissed her like he did everything else, with complete focus, with absolute intention, like nothing else in the world existed, except this moment. Except her. Elena had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with this intensity, this total presence. Victor's hands moved from her face to her hair, to her waist, pulling her against him. She could feel the controlled strength in his body, the coiled power he was keeping carefully in check. He broke the kiss, breathing hard, resting his forehead against hers. We should slow down, he said, his voice rough. I don't want to rush this. I don't want you to regret anything. I won't regret it, Elena said, surprised by the certainty in her voice. I've spent my whole life being careful, Victor. I don't want to be careful anymore. Not with you. He pulled back slightly, studying her face. You're sure? Because once we cross this line, everything changes. You won't just be my employee. My consultant. You'll be mine in a way that's far more complicated, far more dangerous. People will know. They'll use it against both of us. They'll try to hurt you to hurt me. I know. I don't care. Let them try. The fierceness in her own words surprised her, but they were true. For the first time in her life, Elena wanted something enough to fight for it, to risk for it. Victor's smile was slow and predatory. Then come with me. He led her through the penthouse to his bedroom, a space she'd never entered. It was simpler than she expected, almost Spartan. A massive bed with dark linens, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimal furniture, everything clean, organized, controlled, just like him. He turned to face her in the dim light, his hands gentle as they found the zipper of her dress. If at any point you want to stop, you tell me. No judgment, no consequences. Your word is absolute here. Do you understand? Elena nodded, her throat too tight for words. The dress slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet. Victor's hands skimmed over her skin, reverent and careful, as if she were something precious. You're shaking, he observed. Are you afraid? No, Elena said honestly. I've never felt like this before. Never wanted someone this much. It's overwhelming. His hands stilled. How many men have you been with? The question was gentle, curious, not judgmental. 2. Both when I was younger, both brief, both forgettable. After my mother died, I didn't have time for relationships, didn't have energy for anything except surviving. Victor's expression softened. Then we'll take this slowly. I'll show you what it means to be wanted properly, to be valued, to be seen completely. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, his hands exploring with patient thoroughness. Elena had never been touched with such focused attention. Victor learned her body like he learned everything, with methodical precision and genuine interest. He discovered what made her gasp, what made her arch into him, what made her breath catch. He was patient in a way that drove her crazy, refusing to rush despite her increasingly desperate attempts to speed things along. Patience, he murmured against her skin. I want to remember every sound you make, every way you respond. Let me learn you. And he did. For hours he learned her. Took her apart slowly, gently, with a thoroughness that left her trembling and overwhelmed. He was demanding but never harsh, guiding her responses, teaching her body what it could feel. When he finally moved inside her, his eyes never left hers, watching every flicker of pleasure, every moment of intensity. Stay with me, he commanded softly, when her eyes threatened to close. Look at me. Let me see you. All of you. It was the most vulnerable Elena had ever felt, being seen so completely while feeling so much. But it was also the most alive she'd ever felt. The most present. The most real. When she finally shattered in his arms, when the pleasure crested and broke over her in waves, she cried, not from pain, but from the release of holding herself together for so long, from finally being held by someone strong enough to let her fall apart. Victor held her through it, his own release following hers, his body shuddering as he buried his face in her neck. Afterward, they lay tangled together, skin cooling, breathing slowing. Victor's fingers traced idle patterns on her spine, soothing and possessive. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Elena nodded against his chest, too overwhelmed with emotion to speak. She felt cracked open, exposed, but somehow safer than she'd ever felt. Talk to me, Victor urged gently. Tell me what you're feeling. I feel seen, Elena whispered, like you looked past every wall I've ever built and saw me anyway. And it's terrifying, but also, it's everything I've wanted without knowing I wanted it. Victor's arms tightened around her. You are seen. Completely. And I'm not going anywhere. You understand that? Whatever happens now, however complicated this gets, You're mine and I'm yours. That's not negotiable. The possessiveness should have bothered her, should have felt like too much, too fast, too intense. But Elena had spent 28 years being no one's, belonging nowhere. The idea of being claimed, of mattering enough to someone that they'd fight to keep her, was intoxicating. I'm yours, she repeated softly, testing the words. They felt right, felt true, felt like coming home after years of wandering. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. And for the first time since her mother died, Elena slept without nightmares. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and Victor's gray eyes watching her. Good morning, he said, brushing hair back from her face. How do you feel? Elena stretched, feeling pleasantly sore in places she'd never noticed before. Different. Good different. Like something fundamental shifted. It did. You crossed a line last night, Elena. There's no going back to who you were before. You're in my world completely now. In every way. Are you ready for what that means? Elena considered the question seriously. Was she ready to be the Mafia King's woman? To have a target on her back? To be watched and judged and tested constantly? To live in a world of violence and secrets and impossible choices? The old Elena would have said no, would have run back to safety, but the woman she was becoming, the one Victor was helping her discover, said yes without hesitation. I'm ready, she said. Teach me everything I need to know. Victor's smile was proud, satisfied. Then let's begin. The next 6 months were the most intense of Elena's life. She learned to navigate Victor's world with increasing confidence, understanding the unspoken rules, the delicate hierarchies, the careful dance of power and respect. She learned which men in the organization respected her and which ones resented her presence. She learned to read situations quickly, to know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to be soft and when to be steel. Her work continued to impress Victor. She streamlined operations across his legitimate businesses, saving millions annually. She identified 3 more embezzlers, caught 2 suppliers overcharging, and restructured the management at a struggling hotel until it turned profitable within 3 months. She was good at what she did, and everyone knew it. But they also knew she was Victor's, and that complicated everything. There were challenges, men who tested her with insults or inappropriate advances, seeing if she'd run to Victor for protection or handle it herself. She learned to handle it herself, to put men in their place with words sharp as knives, to command respect without raising her voice. Women in Victor's world were rare, and the few who existed watched her with suspicion or envy. Elena made no friends, but she earned grudging respect through competence and composure. The biggest challenge was Sergei, Victor's second-in-command. He'd been loyal to Victor for 20 years, had been his right hand since Victor first built his empire. And he hated Elena. Not openly, never that, but in small ways. Questioning her recommendations in meetings, suggesting she was too inexperienced for certain projects, implying her position was based on bedroom skills rather than business acumen. Victor shut it down when he witnessed it, but Sergei was careful, only showing his disdain when Victor wasn't watching. Elena knew she'd have to handle Sergei eventually, prove herself to him or neutralize his influence. The opportunity came in April, 6 months after she'd started working for Victor. The organization was moving into legitimate real estate development, a massive project that would cost $50 million and take 3 years. Victor put Elena in charge of the initial analysis, determining which properties to acquire, which contractors to use, how to structure the financing. It was the biggest project she'd handled, and everyone was watching to see if she'd fail. Sergei gave her bad information deliberately, steering her toward a property that seemed perfect but was secretly contaminated, would cost tens of millions to remediate. Elena almost missed it, almost recommended the purchase. But something felt wrong. The deal was too good, too easy. She spent 3 nights barely sleeping, digging through environmental reports, geological surveys, historical records. And she found it. The contamination, the cover-up, the trap Sergei had set. She documented everything, put together a presentation showing not just the contamination but how the information had been deliberately withheld from her analysis. She requested a meeting with Victor and all his top lieutenants, including Sergei. When she presented her findings, Sergei's face went pale. He tried to claim ignorance, but Elena had traced the false information directly to him, had documented every step. "You deliberately sabotaged this project," Elena said, her voice calm but cold. "You risked $50 million and 3 years of work because you wanted to prove I'm not qualified for my position. The question is, why would someone who claims to be loyal to Victor actively work against the organization's interests?" The room went silent. Victor's expression was unreadable, but the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sergei started to defend himself, but Victor raised one hand and the man fell silent immediately. "Is this true, Sergei?" Victor's voice was quiet, dangerous. "Did you give Elena false information?" Sergei looked trapped. If he lied and Elena could prove it, he was finished. If he admitted it, he was admitting betrayal. "I was testing her," Sergei finally said, making sure she was thorough enough to catch mistakes. "She passed. That proves she's qualified." "By risking $50 million of my money?" Victor's tone could have frozen blood. "By attempting to embarrass her in front of the entire leadership? By trying to make her fail?" He stood, walked slowly around the table until he was standing directly in front of Sergei. "You've been with me 20 years. I've trusted you with my life, with my empire. But you let your pride, your resentment of a woman being in a position of power, compromise your judgment. That's unacceptable." What happened next happened fast. Victor grabbed Sergei by the throat, lifted him partially out of his chair. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but everyone in the room heard clearly. "You will apologize to Elena. You will give her your complete cooperation on all future projects. And you will never, ever question her authority or competence again. If you do, if I hear even a whisper that you're undermining her, I will remove you from this organization in a way that ensures you never work anywhere ever again. Do you understand?" Sergei's face was red, his eyes bulging. "Yes, I understand." Victor released him, stepped back, his expression calm again as if nothing had happened. "Good. Elena, excellent work. Your thoroughness saved us from a catastrophic mistake. You have full authority to proceed with the real estate project. Choose the properties, the contractors, the structure. Report to me weekly, but the decisions are yours. Gentlemen, this meeting is over." The room emptied quickly, everyone avoiding eye contact. Elena stood frozen, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She'd done it. She'd stood up to Sergei, proven herself, earned respect through competence, not fear. But watching Victor defend her so absolutely, so violently, reminded her of the reality of his world. He protected what was his with ruthless efficiency. When they were alone, Victor pulled her into his arms. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Better than fine. I did it. You did. You were brilliant, thorough, brave. You didn't come to me, you didn't ask for protection. You handled it yourself and only brought me in when you had all the evidence. That's exactly right. That's exactly how you survive in this world." He kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you." The words shouldn't have meant so much, but they did. Elena had spent her life seeking approval from people who barely noticed her. Victor's pride felt like sunlight after years in shadow. The real estate project was a massive undertaking. Elena worked 16-hour days for months, negotiating with contractors, navigating city permits, managing budgets. Victor worked beside her, teaching her the more delicate aspects of their business: how to read people, how to leverage power, how to make people want to give you what you need. They were partners in business and in bed, and the line between the two blurred until Elena could barely remember where one ended and the other began. By summer, the real estate development was on track, ahead of schedule and under budget. Elena had proven herself not just to Sergei but to everyone in the organization. She was no longer just Victor's woman. She was a force in her own right, someone whose opinion mattered, whose approval was sought, whose anger was feared. She'd become exactly what Victor had promised: visible, powerful, necessary. And she'd fallen completely in love with him. She hadn't meant to, had told herself it was just attraction, just the intensity of their physical relationship, just gratitude for the opportunities he'd given her. But somewhere between the business meetings and the late-night conversations, between watching him command a room and feeling him gentle in the darkness, she'd fallen, hardened completely, in a way that terrified her, because she had everything to lose. Victor had never said he loved her. He was affectionate, attentive, protective, possessive. He valued her, respected her, desired her. But love was a word he never used, and Elena was afraid to be the first to say it. What if he didn't feel the same? What if this was just business and pleasure for him? Nothing deeper. The fear kept her silent, kept the words locked in her throat even as they burned to be spoken. On the 1-year anniversary of the night she'd walked into Victor's club, he took her back to the penthouse after a long day. "I have something for you," he said, leading her to the living room. On the coffee table sat a simple box, wrapped in silver paper. Elena opened it carefully, her hands shaking slightly. Inside was a key, and beneath it, papers. Property papers. For a loft in Chelsea with big windows and exposed brick. Already furnished. Already hers. "Your dream," Victor said quietly. "The loft with big windows and plants everywhere. I bought it 6 months ago. Had it furnished to your specifications. Happy anniversary, Elena." Tears spilled down her cheeks, the fact that he'd remembered a throwaway comment from months ago, that he'd made her dream real without her even asking, that he'd been planning this for half a year, broke something open inside her. "Victor, I don't know what to say. Say you'll move in. Say you'll make it yours. Say you'll finally let yourself have the things you want." His voice was soft, hopeful, vulnerable in a way she rarely heard. "I'll move in," Elena whispered. "I'll make it mine. But Victor, I need to tell you something. I need to say it even if you don't feel the same way, even if it complicates everything." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I love you. I'm in love with you. Completely. Terrifyingly. No going back in love with you. And I know you didn't promise me that. Didn't offer me romance or fairy tales. But I need you to know anyway because I can't keep holding it in." The silence that followed felt eternal. Victor's expression was unreadable, and Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Terror flooding through her. She'd ruined it. She'd asked for too much, revealed too much, wanted too much. But then Victor smiled, slow and genuine, and the fear dissolved. "You think you're telling me something I don't know?" He pulled her into his arms, held her close against his chest. "Elena, I've loved you since the night you knelt on my floor and offered me anything. Since you looked at me with those dark eyes and showed me what real courage looks like. I've loved you through every audit, every negotiation, every moment of watching you become who you were always meant to be. Then why didn't you say it?" The words came out small, hurt. "Because I wanted you to choose this. Choose me, without the weight of my feelings influencing you. I wanted you to fall for me on your own terms, in your own time. And you did. You chose me, Elena. Not because I loved you first, but because you wanted to. That means everything." Elena sobbed against his chest, relief and joy overwhelming her. "I choose you. Every day, every moment, I choose you." Victor tilted her face up, kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "And I choose you. Today, tomorrow, every day after. You're mine, Elena. But more than that, I'm yours. Completely." They made love that night with a new intensity, a new meaning. It wasn't just physical anymore. Wasn't just desire and need. It was love, deep and complicated and real. It was two people who'd both been alone their whole lives finding home in each other. And when Elena fell asleep in Victor's arms, in the penthouse that had become as much hers as his, she felt complete for the first time in her life. The loft in Chelsea became their sanctuary, a place separate from the business and the violence and the constant surveillance. They spent weekends there, cooking together, reading, making plans for the future. Elena filled it with plants, dozens of them, creating a small indoor garden. Victor pretended to complain about the maintenance, but she caught him watering them when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression soft. They talked about everything in that loft, about their pasts, their fears, their dreams for what came next. Victor told her about the violence he'd witnessed, the things he'd done to build his empire, the weight of commanding men's loyalty and fear. Elena listened without judgment, understanding that his darkness was part of him, that she couldn't love half of him and reject the rest. She told him about the loneliness of her childhood, about watching her mother die slowly, about the guilt she still carried over Marco's death, wondering if she could have saved him. "You couldn't have," Victor said firmly. "Addicts save themselves, or they don't. You can't love someone into recovery, can't sacrifice enough to fix them. Marco made his choices, and they killed him. That's not on you." The absolution helped, loosened the knot of guilt she'd carried for over a year. By fall, the real estate development was nearly complete. 3 luxury buildings in Manhattan, each one a showcase of design and efficiency. The project had come in under budget and would generate millions in revenue annually. It was Elena's triumph, proof of her vision and competence. Victor threw a party to celebrate, invited everyone who mattered in New York's business and underworld circles. Elena wore a crimson dress that made her feel powerful, confident, beautiful. She moved through the crowd on Victor's arm, accepting congratulations, making conversation, playing the role of his partner perfectly. She belonged here now, in this world of expensive champagne and dangerous men. She'd earned her place through sweat and intelligence and courage. Near midnight, Victor led her away from the crowd, up to the roof garden of the building where the party was held. The city spread out below them, a carpet of lights stretching to every horizon. "I brought you up here for a reason," Victor said, taking both her hands in his. "This last year with you has been the best of my life. You've made me better, softer in the ways that matter, stronger in the ways that count. You've built something remarkable. Not just these buildings, but yourself. You've become the woman you were always meant to be." He dropped to one knee, and Elena's breath caught. From his pocket he pulled a small box, opened it to reveal a ring. Not ostentatious, not a massive diamond meant to impress others. Simple, elegant, a platinum band with 3 small diamonds, understated and perfect. "I don't have pretty words, Elena. I'm not a romantic man, but I'm a man who knows value when he sees it, who protects what matters, who keeps what he treasures. You matter. You're treasured, and I want to keep you officially, permanently, forever. Marry me, be my wife, my partner, my home. Choose me for always." Elena was crying again, but this time the tears were pure joy. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes." Victor slid the ring onto her finger, stood, pulled her into a kiss that tasted like champagne and promises. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena laughed through her tears. "You said you weren't romantic. I'm not. This is just practical. I want legal claim to you. I want every man in this city to know you're permanently off limits. I want to build a life with you, the kind that lasts. Then, let's build it. Together." They stayed on the roof for another hour, making plans. A small wedding, just close friends and important allies. A honeymoon somewhere warm and far from the city. Children, maybe, someday when the business was more stable. A future that felt real and possible and theirs. When they finally returned to the party, Victor announced their engagement. The response was enthusiastic, congratulations flowing from every direction. Even Sergei, who'd become grudgingly respectful over the months, offered his genuine good wishes. The wedding happened 3 months later, in December, in the penthouse where they'd first met. Small and intimate, just 50 people, the ones who mattered. Elena wore a simple white dress, her dark hair down, minimal jewelry except the engagement ring and the wedding band Victor slid onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly. They wrote their own vows. Victor's were short, direct. I vow to protect you, value you, choose you every day. I vow to be honest, even when it's hard. I vow to love you as fiercely as I know how, for as long as I live. Elena's were longer, more emotional. I vow to be strong for both of us when you need it. I vow to never make myself small to make you comfortable. I vow to choose you every morning and come home to you every night. I vow to love you completely. The darkness and the light, the gentle and the fierce. I vow to build a life with you that's worthy of both of us. When the officiant pronounced them married, Victor kissed her like a man claiming his salvation, and Elena kissed him back like a woman who'd finally found home. The reception was joyful. The first time Elena had seen Victor's world celebrate something beautiful instead of consolidating power or demonstrating strength. There was music and dancing and laughter, and for a few hours everyone forgot about territories and rivalries and the constant violence that underpinned their world. They just celebrated love, commitment, two people choosing each other against all odds. Late that night, after all the guests had left, Victor and Elena stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city. Do you ever regret it? Elena asked quietly. Choosing me, bringing me into your world, changing both our lives. Victor pulled her back against his chest, his arms wrapping around her waist. Never. Not for a single moment. You're the best decision I've ever made, even though I complicated everything? Even though loving me makes you vulnerable in ways you never were before? Especially because of that. I spent 40 years being invulnerable, Elena. Being untouchable, unreachable, alone at the top. It was empty. You made me human again. You gave me something worth protecting that wasn't power or territory. You gave me a reason to come home. He turned her in his arms, cupped her face in his hands. I was dying before you, just slowly, invisibly. You saved me as much as I saved you. Elena leaned into his touch, this man who'd seen her completely and loved her anyway, who'd given her the world and asked only for her heart in return. We saved each other, she corrected. We both deserve to be saved. We both deserve to be loved completely, and now, we are. Now we are, Victor agreed. And there in the penthouse where her new life had begun, where she'd knelt in fear and stood in strength, where she'd transformed from invisible to essential, Elena finally understood what redemption really meant. It wasn't about erasing the past or fixing what was broken. It was about finding someone who saw all your scars and loved you not despite them but because they proved you'd survived. It was about being brave enough to want things, to reach for happiness, to believe you deserved softness and passion, and a love that didn't require you to be smaller than you were. Victor had shown her that her hunger to be seen wasn't weakness. It was strength, that her need for connection wasn't desperation. It was human. And in loving him, in choosing him every day, in building a life that was messy and complicated, and sometimes dangerous, but always real, Elena discovered the most important truth of all. She'd spent her whole life believing she was too much for anyone to love completely, too needy, too intense, too broken by loss and loneliness. But she wasn't too much. She'd just been surrounded by people too small to love her the way she deserved. And Victor, dangerous and powerful and fierce, had a heart big enough to hold all of her, the strength to match her intensity, the courage to dive deep into her darkness and pull her toward the light. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't powerless anymore. She wasn't alone anymore. She was seen, valued, loved, exactly as she was, and that, she realized, was the greatest gift anyone had ever given her. The permission to be fully herself and still be treasured. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Comment where you're listening from, and if you felt it was really worth it, consider becoming a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you felt this story was really worth listening to, click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue creating stories that touch the soul.